All right, welcome everyone. So this is for Design 112, and this is regarding assignment number 3. This is working with your black and white paints. You also will be working with now your brushes. So super exciting that we get to actually experiment now with acrylic paints. So also too, just to let you guys know, please work with whatever you have. So the materials that you have, if for some reason you did not purchase everything or are unable to, let me know separately, and I can always have different types of ideas or ways that we can work around with what we have, okay? So with these particular brushes, what I'm going to use are larger brushes for this one. These are the flat kind. And I went ahead and already got my paint, so I got some black and white. I just started with a little bit on each side. Again, you can use whatever you want. I'm using foam plates, a plastic bag, Tupperware lid, whatever you have that you're able to utilize can work. Now, for this particular part, this is the value scale. The value scale will have 12 swatches and they will be 3 by 4. Now, this is our mixed media paper that we already worked with. Mixed media paper is going to be great for our acrylic. Okay, so on the bottom here, how it says acrylic, watercolor, pen, and pencil. So when you measure this, you'll be using 2 sheets of paper. Now what I did, let me show you what I did at first, is I went ahead and allowed me to get a border. We'll be cutting this out, and actually these will be little swatches. So I'm going to paint over these empty areas, but allows me not to paint onto the other side. So I went ahead and gave myself an inch in between each of these, and these are now 4 inches. So I have 4 inches in length, and then I'm going to turn it to the opposite side, and I gave myself also a buffer of 1 inch on each side, and then I went ahead and did 3 inches. So I can fit 4 on the top, 4 on the bottom, so this will be 8 total for this particular page. Now, however you want to measure is fine. This is just how I have measured mine. We don't want to use any water right now for this particular piece. We just want to keep the pure hues. When we water down this medium, you'll see that the black will start to kind of almost give a brownish look to it. It'll look more like watercolor, and the white will be less opaque. So you can start from white to dark or just start with black to light. I'm going to start literally with black. I'm going to start with this first square, and I'm just going to go ahead and work with dry on dry. So that means my brush is dry, and this is a dry sheet of paper. I did not add any water to it. And as I'm working, you can tell that it's a beautiful rich black. I don't have to worry again with getting directly in the line because we'll cut this out anyhow. But here's my black. Now what's important with acrylic paint is acrylic paint dries pretty quickly. It will dry maybe within 20 minutes for sure, but if not, this could dry within maybe just a few minutes. So when you are going to start, I recommend doing the entire value scale at one sitting. So make sure that you're ready to sit down for this one. Okay, I'm going to start adding some white. Now in this, I can mix on my canvas itself, my palette, but I'm going to go ahead and mix directly on my plate, my paper. Because this is wet, I can already pull the medium over. So I'm adding white into already this black on my brush, and as I go back and forth, again, not adding any water to it yet. When you have no water, sometimes you have to press a little bit more to kind of give that different value transition, but I'm not sure if the camera's picking up. This is a little bit lighter of now kind of a dark charcoal gray. If you feel like it needs more white, I can just dab a little bit on and just continue to add and pull it through. You want to have a consistency too of how the paint is flowing. So you don't want to have all these different shapes of circular lines, angled lines. Just keep it consistent. I found working just back and forth in terms of vertical positions in the way that I place my medium works well. So I went ahead and added a little bit more white, and I'm going to just continue to just put this paint onto the paper. This is also really relaxing, you guys. It's super fun to do this. Paint is so much different than paper cuts as we were used to doing. And I'm just going to pull it through again, trying to get to all my edges, keeping it consistent. Now the neat thing is this is all still really wet, so I can always keep pulling back and forth. I don't see too much of a change. A lot of this will be eyeball. So eyeballing meaning you will see visually if it looks different. If I have too much white on it, I can go ahead and add a little bit more black and just go back and forth with that relationship of building value. Okay, then I'm gonna go ahead and go with my next square. I'm gonna add more white to it. And now I'm just pulling it even further. I'm pressing down to really get these little black areas here. I'm gonna get a little bit more white. And the neat thing is, again, because it's still wet medium, we can always go back and add. So for example, if I made this too white, I just go back and add more black into it. Again, if you were to leave for a few minutes, this will dry and you will just have to start again in terms of getting the values changed. Now, the main thing is you don't want to see too much of a jump. We're only doing 12 squares for this, 12 swatches, excuse me. You're welcome to do more than that. I had students do twice as much because they just wanted a really smooth gradient. Again, not necessary. You don't want to use too much of your paper, although I'm sure you have a lot of your mixed media paper left. If, for example, too, you did not purchase any of your paper that's for the dry media, excuse me, the wet media, what I'm saying is use what you have again. So just use your drawing paper. If you have to use drawing paper, it will curl and buckle because it's not made to work with paint. But again, we're trying to be as resourceful as we can. Okay, so here's my transition. It might jump a little bit too much, and I'm already talking to you guys, so it is drying a little bit, and I have to kind of pull that back in. When you do see it drying, but it's still not there yet, you can go ahead and add some water to this. If you add water, I would pull it off on some of your plate, or again, have a paper towel or a piece of material just to kind of allow it to clean itself. Okay, so here's my process so far, the transition of values. I'm trying to make that where you guys can all see that properly. Now this one again might jump slightly, so I can go ahead and add more value. For the sake of time, I'm going to keep on going. Now this part can be a little difficult because you're not seeing it in conjunction with this row. So you're going to be cutting these out anyhow, and you can always add more to it. If for some reason too the swatches are not consistent, again, we will still cut these out, we'll remeasure them and put them all together at the very end. And so it can still, other swatches could be added almost like a puzzle piece. Okay, here's a lighter one. I'm getting my brush is still wet, and I'm going to continue to add a little bit more whites. You will do this again for 12 swatches, so this next page will be a lot more whites into this. But notice too, a lot of paint is not even been used, and I'm just taking little pieces. You don't want to add too much paint where it gets very thick. If it is thick, it does take a while to dry. And also it's good to conserve paint. You don't need too much to be utilized. Making sure I cover that square in completion, or rectangle, excuse me. Okay, so here's my next one. Then I'm going to continue on. And again, you just want to keep checking your eye to see, am I going too light? Is there too much of a jump? Does it look like the transition's going okay? Acrylic paint too does dry a little bit darker than how you apply it. So just be aware of that. Also, if you add water to it, it does dry differently. So we're trying to stay away from water for this particular value scale. But super fun to work with paint, right? So much fun to just have this time and just work with the painting transition. Really good again how all the paint is still wet, so it has a smoother transition. These are a little bit too similar, so I'm going to add a little bit more white to this and continue on. And again, I just put a little bit white at the edge of my brush. I don't want to add too much because then it can take a lot of black to add back to that lightness again. Okay. Then as I keep going, I'll add more white. It's kind of nice to start to see that smooth transition of lighter values. So almost if anyone's into drawing and we create gradient scales with drawing, we use our different number pencils to create a smooth transition of value. This is very similar to that. We're just using black and white paint to make our gray tones. Okay, and I'll add a little bit more white. Acrylic is synthetic, it is plastic, so it does have a kind of a glossy quality sometimes as you work with it. It has kind of a smoothness. It does dry where it can be a little bit more opaque and flat, but it still is a really great medium to work with. This does also stain clothing, so just watch out for that. Be careful what you're wearing. And I have even a tablecloth. This is my kitchen table I'm working from. Okay, so here's a value scale so far. I started with my blacks and just continually added some whites to it to create kind of a gray effect to it. Now I can look at this overall because I still have some areas that are lighter, and you can keep on adding if you need to. I'll add a little bit more white into this, just to kind of give a little bit more of a stepstone as we go through the process. Okay, so this is a value scale. I would now go with my second sheet of paper and start creating more.